It is the 4th day of August 2021, and as Ugandans, we are proud to have won our first gold medal in the Olympics 2020. A warm welcome to TV Africa News, and thank you for always joining us. This is Africa Today. My name is Najuma Luima, but first are the headlines. Africa to host the African Regional Intellectual Property Rights Conference. Parliament wants the Auditor General to conduct forensics audit of COVID-19 funds. Kenya bars a deputy president from private trip to Uganda. And in sports, a Bull Football Club announced a technical staff. Club legend Asiku bounces back. A warm welcome once again. Now the news in detail. The Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Honorable Okello Oryem, has called upon Ugandans to embrace the African Regional Intellectual Property Rights Conference, which is aimed at facilitating the socio-economic transformation of Uganda. The conference is scheduled to take place at Speak Resort, Munyonyo. Nalugo has more.
Addressing journalists at Uganda Media Center in Kampala, Honorable Oryem stressed that the conference is aimed at promoting and protecting copyrights so that the authors benefit from their work.
We are hopeful that the conference and resulting protocol will facilitate the socio-economic development of Uganda and the participating countries through the use of intellectual properties and copyrights in particular. I would like to congratulate my colleague, the Minister of Justice, and his ministry, and the Uganda Registration Bureau, and the Registrar General here on this milestone, and invite Ugandans to participate fully in these intellectual events and follow proceedings across media platforms.
Despite challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, Uganda continues to provide a secure and safe destination for tourists, such as holding such international events. Mase Ainobwisho, the Registrar General at Uganda Registration Bureau Services, said government will continue to protect copyrights of individuals if registered with Uganda Registration Bureau Services.
The state also is here to protect you with regard to enforcement. If your right is infringed, we have an enforcement unit at the Uganda Registration Center or Bureau, which is manned by police. And we have educated as many police men and women as possible on intellectual property enforcement. And so that is the support that we continue to give: registration, protection, as long as these matters have been brought to the state.
The African Regional Intellectual Property Rights Conference is scheduled to take place between 20th and 28th August 2021 at the Speak Resort in Munyonyo. Nalugo Muyingo, Africa Today.
The Parliamentary Task Force on the National COVID-19 presented its report before Parliament, recommending that the Auditor General carry out a forensics audit on the over shillings 5 trillion that has been spent so far in the fight against COVID-19. The report was tabled by the chairperson of the Parliamentary Task Force on COVID-19, Abdu Katuntu.
The chairperson of the Parliamentary Task Force on COVID-19, Abdu Katuntu, while in Parliament, said that Ugandans need to know whether taxpayers' money was put to good use, hence the call for a forensic audit. He noted that government, through the Ministry of Health, should avail sufficient personal protective gear to all health workers, prioritize the procurement of enough oxygen, recruit more essential workers, set up ambulance systems in addition to establishing more isolation units. The report also noted that there was poor planning between the Ministry of Health and that of Finance in the procurement of the 282 pickups that will be used in the monitoring of fight against the pandemic. The MPs also recommended to the government to use all legal means of accessing the COVID-19 vaccine, such that all Ugandans are vaccinated. Many MPs told journalists that the revelations in the report are valid, calling upon government to urgently address the recommendations to avoid the looming third wave of the pandemic.
The State House Anti-Corruption Unit has, together with police, arrested 4 officials from the office of the Prime Minister over the purchase of poor quality relief items for victims of the recent floods in Kasese. Let's take a look. According to the unit's head, Colonel Edith Nakalema, the 4 are part of the 9 OPM officials interdicted after a directive from the Prime Minister, Robinah Nabbanja, in relation to the procurement of the alleged substandard food and non-items, including blankets and mosquito nets worth shillings 10 billion meant for Kasese flood victims. She named the 4 arrested OPM officials as Godfrey Kaima, the accounting officer, Henry Agabatumwine, the internal auditor, Rose Nakabogo, the acting commissioner in charge of disaster preparedness, and Esther Odong, the procurement officer. Kampala Metropolitan Deputy Police spokesperson Luke Owesijire said investigations are still ongoing to get more information on how the procurement of the alleged substandard supplies was done. The development comes a few weeks after Prime Minister Robinah Nabbanja rejected relief items that had been delivered by officials from the Office of the Prime Minister to the Kasese flood victims. Nabbanja said whereas the mosquito nets were too small, the blankets too were too light and not fit to be used by human beings. Moving on, the recently concluded nationwide 42-day lockdown has added to the continued economic slowdown, according to the Stanbic Purchasing Managers Index for July. The headline Stanbic Purchasing Managers Index slipped to 34.6 in July, down from 34.9 recorded during June. Kachanchu has more.
Ronald Muyanja, the head of trading at Stanbic Bank Uganda, said a reduction in prices was noted for the first time in 14 months, while companies lowered their selling prices amid weak demand. The latest reading is well below the series average of 52.5. This is the second successive decline in business conditions since the lockdown was enforced on June 18th. The Stanbic Bank PMI monthly survey involving some 400 respondents is produced by IHMS Market and has been conducted since June 2016. It covers the agriculture, industry, construction, wholesale, retail and services sectors. The headline figure derived from the survey is Purchasing Managers Index, which provides an indication of operating conditions in Uganda. With input costs decreasing and demand weak, companies lowered their selling prices, the second month running in which has been the case. Agriculture was the only sector to register a rise in charges.
Let's take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto was on Monday stopped from flying to neighboring Uganda in what his supporters say is a state-backed campaign to humiliate him. It would have been Ruto's second trip to Kampala in a month. We have more.
After Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto arrived at Nairobi's Wilson Airport for his flight, he was told to seek clearance from the head of public service. He was then made to await 5 hours before his flight was cancelled. After he was stopped from leaving the country, Ruto said in a cryptic tweet that it was alright and asked them to leave it to God in Kiswahili. It is the latest incident to plague the strained relations between Ruto and his boss, President Uhuru Kenyatta. The two erstwhile partners who came to power in 2012 through their Jubilee coalition fell out in 2018. Ruto is rumored to be preparing a bid for the presidency. Kenyatta, who is ineligible to stand, is alleged to be backing former Prime Minister and veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga against an old understanding with his deputy. Kenyatta and Odinga have addressed joint rallies in support of a bill to amend the constitution known in Kenya as the Building Bridges Initiative. Ruto is a regular visitor to Uganda. He last traveled to the country in early July and met with President Yoweri Museveni.
World-renowned history scholar Runoko Rashid has passed away today while visiting Egypt. The death of respected academic Runoko Rashid was announced late last night by his friends and family. He passed away while on a research trip to Egypt on 2nd August. Dr. Runoko Rashid was a historian, writer, and public speaker with a keen interest in the foundations of humanity and civilization in Africa and the current existence and condition of blacks throughout the global African community. He held frequent seminars about African history, Pan-Africanism, and focused his work specifically on the global African presence, which details the movement of Africans outside Africa before and after enslavement. Rashid is also a highly successful author, having published collections of essays as well as books about black culture and black history. He was a prolific academic writer, publishing 22 books across his career, including, among others, The Black Image in Antiquity, Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe, as well as Uncovering the African Past. Rashid also traveled across the world, visiting 124 countries, as well as lecturing and teaching in 67 of them. He was particularly interested in the African presence in India, Australia, and the Pacific Islands. According to his family, Dr. Runoko made his ancestral transition in Kemet or Egypt on Monday, while on his annual tour of the country, which he had embarked on 31st July and was supposed to finish on 13th August. Here at TV Africa, we send out our condolences to his family and friends during this difficult time, and we say rest in power, Brother Runoko. Moving on, a decision to ban the use of extra-large swim cape designed specifically to protect dreadlocks, weaves, hair extensions, braids, and thick and curly hair in the Tokyo Games has spotlighted a lack of diversity in swimming. Alice Daring, the first black female swimmer on Britain's Olympic team, uses and promotes the Soul Cape, but has been forbidden from wearing it.
Daring, aged 24, uses and promotes the Soul Cape, an extra-large swim cap designed especially to protect afro hair and large hairstyles, but she has been forbidden from wearing it in Tokyo. FINA, which oversees international competitions in swimming, rejected the application from the British makers of the Soul Cape for use in Tokyo Games, citing on previous instances in which swimmers needed capes of such size and configuration. Coach Tony Cronini says managing hair when swimming is a common challenge for people of color. FINA's decision was so much more than a ban on a swimming cap. Dismissing it represented yet another injustice. Two of Cronini's swim students, Durrett Parks and Shamia Nanton, say they both struggle with their own hair. Neither own a Soul Cap or similar product, but were equally perplexed by the move. Those familiar with the situation say the reasons for a shortage of black swimmers run deep in history. Accessibility to public pools is a barrier. Wealth inequality makes an often expensive sport like swimming inaccessible. According to the United States Swimming Foundation, 64% of black children do not know how to swim compared to 14% of white American children.
More than 800 people have been rescued in the Mediterranean Sea over the last few days. Two rescue vessels, the Ocean Viking and the Sea-Watch 3, say they have reached capacity with hundreds of migrants on board each.
According to the humanitarian rescue organization SOS Mediterranean, which runs the Ocean Viking ship, there were more than 550 migrants and refugees on board. Broke at sea sometimes for several days with the heat or sickness, some faint on deck, and the situation becomes even more untenable. Among those, at least 28 women, 33 minors, 2/3 of whom appear to be unaccompanied. The Marseille-based organization said the youngest survivor rescued was just 3 months old. According to the tweet from the rescue organization Sea-Watch, only one person with urgent medical needs had been allowed to evacuate. The hundreds of others are still waiting. The German rescue organization Sea-Watch tweeted that following the rescue, only one person with urgent medical needs was allowed to evacuate, with hundreds more waiting adrift for a safety point.
Let's once again take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. Once again, you're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. In our business news today, Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio met General Khalifa Haftar, Commander-in-Chief of the Libyan Arab Armed Forces, on Monday, prior to participating in a ceremony to reopen the Italian consulate in Benghazi, eastern Libya.
Di Maio arrived in Libya earlier on Monday on a visit that began in the capital Tripoli and then moved to Benghazi, while he is also scheduled to meet the Speaker of Parliament, Councillor Aguila Saleh, in the city of Tobruk. Di Maio's visit to Tripoli included meetings with the President of the Presidential Council, Mohamed Al-Menfi, the President of the Government of National Unity, Abdul Hamid Deiba, and his Libyan counterpart, Najla Al-Monkush. The meeting with Mohamed Al-Menfi dealt with a number of issues, the most important of which is the holding of the elections at the end of this year. Di Maio praised the recent work of the Presidential Council, especially regarding reconciliation amongst Libya's previously warring factions and the unification of the state institutions.
In our health news today, USAID Chief Samantha Power called on Tuesday for Sudanese army to unify with ex-rebels and paramilitary forces to bolster a rocky political transition and a critical peace deal. Power's remarks came at the end of her 4-day visit to Sudan, which has struggled with the deep political splits and economic wars since the April 2019 ouster of strongman Omar al-Bashir. The integration of the powerful paramilitary rapid support forces into Sudanese army has emerged as the latest challenge in the transition. The RSF, formed in 2013 to crush rebels fighting Bashir's government, included members of Darfur's notorious Janjaweed militias, who are accused of carrying out war crimes during a conflict which left 300,000 people dead, according to the UN. In addition, Sudan wants ex-rebel forces, including from Darfur, who once fought both the RSF and regular forces, to join the National Army as part of the historic October 2020 peace deal. On Tuesday, the USAID had announced $56 million of life-saving assistance to Sudan and another $4.3 million to support the country's elections at the end of the transitional period in 2024. Power also visited Sudanese Rakuba refugee camp, where thousands have settled after fleeing conflict in neighboring Ethiopia's Tigray region. In our sports news today, Bull Football Club has announced the full technical team ahead of the 2021-2022 season. Alex Isabidi, who extended his contract, is manager until 2023, with Richard Kasule Bakabulindi as the first assistant former academy coach Daniel Kabari as second assistant, and James Magara as the third assistant coach. Our reporter has more on this story.
On the Bull Football Club list, former Uganda Queens international Noah Babadi Kasule is the club's fitness coach. Kenneth Magada is the goalkeeping wheelist club legend Patrick Respo Hasiku, arguably the club's highest top scorer of all season in the Chief Scout. Hasiku retired from the beautiful game last year after guiding Gaddafi Football Club from the Regional League to the FUFA Big League in the 3rd Division. Bull Chief Executive Officer Ahmed Kongora praised ultimate support to the new technical team as he anticipates to perform well in the coming season compared to this season. Last season, Bull completed in the 11th position with 33 points. Joseph Semju was their top marksman with the Ogresias Ojok and Simon Peter Oketh following on 7 goals apiece. They also reached the semi-finals of the Stanbic Uganda Cup, which was halted due to the second wave of COVID-19 pandemic. The club has so far confirmed the exit of 8 players and has undertaken a massive recruitment of players, including their sworn traditional rivals, Busoga United. Katede Chabasinga, reporting for TV Africa.
Now, before we end our news bulletin today, let's take a recap of our top stories. Africa to host the African Regional Intellectual Property Rights Conference. Parliament wants the Auditor General to conduct forensics audit of COVID-19 funds. Kenya bars a deputy president from private trip to Uganda. And in sports, a Bull Football Club announced a technical staff. Club legend Asiku bounces back. That was the news. Thank you for always keeping it TV Africa. Please do stay tuned. More programming coming your way.
This is Africa, and that was the news.